A comedy show host's career ended in 12 seconds of silence. But what nobody expected was that those 12 seconds would expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government, revealing how one man's disrespect for fallen heroes became the catalyst for the most shocking military cover-up in modern history. This is the story of Bradley Thornton, America's most beloved late-night comedian, whose arrogance and hunger for ratings led him to mock something sacred, the tomb of the unknown soldier. What started as what he thought would be harmless comedy, gold became his complete destruction. But more importantly, it unveiled a truth so devastating that it shook the very foundations of military honor. Bradley had built his empire on controversy. For 15 years, his show Midnight Mayhem dominated ratings by pushing boundaries others wouldn't dare cross. With a $50 million contract and an ego to match, he believed himself untouchable. The network executives worshipped him, advertisers fought for his slots, and celebrities begged to appear on his show. He was the king of late-night television, and kings, he believed, could mock anyone. But there are some things that should never be mocked. Some boundaries that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. Some silences that speak louder than any applause. On November 11, 2023, Bradley made the decision that would not only end his career but expose a military scandal involving stolen valor, falsified records, and the desecration of heroes' memories. What happened in those 12 seconds of absolute silence wasn't just the end of a television show. It was the beginning of justice for those who could no longer speak for themselves. The guard's final gesture wasn't just discipline, it was a message that echoed through every military base, every veteran's home, and every patriotic heart in America. A message that said, some things are sacred, some sacrifices are beyond your jokes, some honors are earned with blood. If you believe that respect for our fallen heroes should never be compromised, hit that like button now. Comment, honor above all, if this story already has your blood boiling, and subscribe because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see celebrity culture and military honor. This story was buried by powerful people, silenced by million-dollar lawyers, and hidden behind classified documents. But today, the truth comes out. Today, you'll witness how one man's arrogance became his downfall, and how a single guard's dignity became a nation's awakening. But to understand how 12 seconds of silence could topple an empire and expose a conspiracy, I need to take you back to where it all began. Bradley Thornton wasn't born into privilege. He clawed his way to the top from the projects of Detroit, where his single mother worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. As a mixed-race kid in the 1980s, he faced mockery from both sides of the racial divide. Too light for some, too dark for others. He learned early that humor was his shield and his weapon. His breakthrough came at 25, when a viral video of him roasting hecklers at a comedy club caught the attention of television executives. They saw dollar signs in his fearless approach to taboo subjects. Nothing is off limits became his motto, and it made him millions. By 2020, Midnight Mayhem was pulling in 12 million viewers nightly. Bradley had survived every controversy. Jokes about disabilities, veterans, minorities, religion. Each time, his lawyers would handle the backlash while his ratings soared. The formula was simple. Outrage equals attention, attention equals money. His penthouse office walls were covered with awards and photos of him with presidents, celebrities, and world leaders. He'd hosted the Oscars twice, sold out Madison Square Garden for his comedy specials, and his memoir Laughing Through the Pain topped bestseller lists for 36 weeks. But success bred arrogance. Bradley began believing his own hype that he was untouchable, that comedy justified everything, that his traumatic childhood gave him license to mock anyone's pain. His team of 20 writers competed to create increasingly shocking material. The more offensive, the more Bradley loved it. The warning signs were there. Veterans groups had been protesting outside his studio for months. His joke about wounded warriors returning from Afghanistan had sparked outrage, but ratings had jumped 15% that week. His accountant showed him the numbers. Controversy was his most profitable product. 3 weeks before November 11th, his head writer pitched the idea during their Monday meeting. Military humor is trending, she said, sliding a folder across his mahogany desk. Arlington National Cemetery Tour. We film you doing crowd work with the guards, comedy gold. Bradley's eyes lit up with predatory excitement. He'd never touched military ceremonies directly, too risky, his former publicist had warned. But she'd quit last month after their heated argument about crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. Her replacement was 25, hungry, and willing to approve anything for a paycheck. The tomb of the unknown soldier? Bradley mused, already visualizing the headlines. Those guards just stand there, right? Perfect straight men for comedy. What Bradley didn't know was that his ex-publicist had sent a warning letter to Arlington National Cemetery 3 days earlier. She'd worked with him for 8 years and knew his patterns. When Bradley got that look in his eyes, someone always got hurt. The letter never reached the right hands. It was filed away in bureaucratic limbo, stamped and forgotten. But Sergeant First Class Antonio Rivera, the guard who would change everything, was already preparing for what he sensed was coming. The real villain wasn't Bradley Thornton. He was just the weapon. The true antagonists were hiding in plain sight. His inner circle, a group of parasites who had been systematically destroying everything sacred about American entertainment for profit. Meet Victoria Sterling, Bradley's new publicist and secret puppet master. At 32, she was the daughter of a disgraced military contractor who had been court-martialed for selling defective body armor to troops in Iraq. Her father's disgrace had cost their family, their fortune, and social standing. Victoria's hatred for the military wasn't just professional, it was personal, generational, and poisonous. She had carefully orchestrated her way into Bradley's inner circle, knowing that his platform could be weaponized against everything her family blamed for their downfall. Military worship is holding America back, she would whisper during their private strategy sessions. These people need to be brought down to earth. Then there was Mitchell Crane, the network's senior vice president of programming, a Harvard MBA who had never served a day in uniform. He saw military respect as an outdated concept hurting their international market share. Patriotism doesn't sell overseas, he'd tell investors. Controversy does. His bonus was directly tied to global viewership numbers, and nothing boosted international attention like American military scandals. The third conspirator was Leonard Voss, Bradley's head writer and ideological poison, a bitter failed comedian who had been rejected by every military comedy show for his inappropriate material. He harbored a deep resentment against what he called military privilege. His own brother had died in Afghanistan, but instead of grief, Leonard felt only rage that his brother's sacrifice had earned more respect than his own artistic contributions. These three had been meeting secretly for months, planning what they called Operation Mockingbird, a systematic campaign to erode military respect through Bradley's platform. The Arlington visit was just the beginning. They had scripts prepared to mock Gold Star families, veteran suicides, and PTSD support groups. Victoria's plan was brilliant in its simplicity. She would book the Arlington visit under the guise of a respectful tribute show, getting them access through legitimate channels. Then Bradley would spontaneously go off script, creating what appeared to be an unplanned controversy. The backlash would be massive, but short-lived. Meanwhile, the real damage would be done. Military ceremonies would be seen as fair game for mockery. Once we normalize this, Victoria explained to her co-conspirators, every sacred cow becomes fair game. Military funerals, veteran hospitals, Memorial Day, everything. Mitchell had already prepared the network's response. We'll suspend him for a week, he'll do a fake apology, and ratings will explode. Then we'll quietly reinstate him with a raise. The legal team was already drafting First Amendment defenses, prepared to turn any military response into a free speech battle. Leonard was working on follow-up material. After Arlington, we hit the Marine Corps birthday, then Veterans Day programming. By Christmas, we'll have completely shifted the conversation. What none of them realized was that their planning sessions had been observed. Bradley's former assistant, Maria Gonzalez, had been quietly documenting their meetings. Her own son was serving in Afghanistan, and she recognized the evil in their plan. She had been sending anonymous tips to military blogs, but no one had taken them seriously. The conspiracy had one fatal flaw. They underestimated the power of authentic honor. They thought military respect was just performance, just tradition that could be mocked away. They were about to learn that some things are sacred, not because of law or custom, but because they're earned with blood and sacrifice. On November 10th, the night before their Arlington visit, Victoria raised a champagne toast in Bradley's penthouse. Tomorrow, we change everything. But Sergeant First Class Rivera was already at his post, preparing for the battle they didn't know they had declared. November 11th, 2023, 2:47 p.m. Arlington National Cemetery had never seen anything like what was about to unfold. Bradley Thornton's production crew arrived with 12 cameras, professional lighting equipment, and enough arrogance to desecrate the most sacred ground in America. The cemetery officials had been deceived. Victoria Sterling's permits claimed they were filming a Veterans Day tribute special, featuring respectful comedy to honor our heroes. The paperwork was perfect, the insurance was paid, and the bribes. 2 key administrators had been quietly transferred to offshore accounts 3 days earlier. Sergeant First Class Antonio Rivera had been guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier for 18 months. A third-generation military family member whose grandfather died at Normandy and whose father was KIA in Vietnam. He embodied everything the tomb represented. His shift was supposed to end at 3 p.m., but something told him to stay. Bradley emerged from his luxury trailer like a predator sensing prey. Designer sunglasses, $5,000 suit, and a smile that never reached his eyes. His opening monologue was already rehearsed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the most exclusive comedy club in America, where the audience has been dead quiet for over a century. The first 20 minutes went according to plan. Bradley delivered scripted jokes about military precision, making fun of the ceremony's formality while staying just within legal boundaries. His writers had crafted each line to be offensive enough for viral clips, but defensible in court. Then Victoria gave him the signal, a subtle nod that meant go nuclear. What happened next was premeditated destruction disguised as spontaneous comedy. Bradley approached the tomb itself, breaking protocol as his cameras rolled. "You know what's funny about unknown soldiers?" he began, his voice carrying across the sacred silence. "They're probably just happy someone finally remembers their names are. Oh wait, that's right, nobody knows who they are." The tourists stopped laughing, even his own crew looked uncomfortable. But Bradley was intoxicated by the attention, the cameras, the power of having 12 million viewers watching him desecrate something sacred. Then came the moment that would end his career. "Hey, tomb guards, I've got a joke for you. How do you wake up a dead soldier? You don't. They're having the best sleep of their lives." Sergeant Rivera's hand tightened on his rifle. His training kept him motionless, but inside, something snapped. This wasn't just disrespect. This was warfare against everything he'd sworn to protect. Bradley wasn't finished. Emboldened by what he mistook for acceptance of his humor, he pulled out his final weapon, a prepared script that Leonard Voss had, written specifically to destroy military dignity forever. "You want to know the real joke?" Bradley's voice grew louder, more aggressive. "These unknown heroes are probably just deserters who got lost, cowards who died running away, and we built them a monument." The silence that followed was deafening, but it wasn't the silence of an audience, it was the silence of a nation holding its breath, watching their most sacred traditions being violated for entertainment. Victoria was filming everything on her personal phone, already uploading clips to social media with inflammatory captions. Mitchell was calculating the international media value. Leonard was taking notes for tomorrow's even more outrageous material. They had successfully executed their attack. The tomb had been mocked, military honor had been publicly humiliated, and they had it all on film. Phase 1 of Operation Mockingbird was complete, but they had made one catastrophic mistake. They had declared war on something bigger than themselves, something that couldn't be bought, intimidated, or mocked into submission. Sergeant Rivera took exactly 3 steps forward. His face was stone, his eyes were fire, and his next action would expose everything they had hidden, reveal every conspiracy they had planned, and bring justice they never saw coming. The countdown to their destruction had begun. What happened in the next 12 seconds changed everything. Sergeant Rivera didn't speak. He didn't break protocol. He didn't even acknowledge Bradley's existence. Instead, he did something that cut deeper than any words ever could. He began the changing of the guard ceremony 2 hours early, completely off schedule, in absolute silence. Every step was perfect. Every turn was precise. Every movement was a masterclass in dignity under fire. As he marched, something extraordinary happened. Every veteran in the crowd began standing. Then the active military families and tourists, who recognized they were witnessing something sacred being defended. Bradley's smirk faltered as he realized the cameras weren't capturing his comedy anymore, they were documenting his humiliation. The crowd wasn't laughing with him. They were standing against him. His power, his platform, his empire. None of it mattered here. But Rivera wasn't done. As he completed his routine, he did something unprecedented in the tomb's history. He stopped directly in front of Bradley's cameras and performed a slow, deliberate salute. Not to Bradley, not to the production crew, but to every fallen soldier whose memory had just been desecrated. The silence stretched for 12 eternal seconds. No one breathed, no one moved. The weight of authentic honor faced off against manufactured entertainment. And there was no contest then. Rivera turned and walked away, never acknowledging Bradley's existence. It was the most devastating dismissal in television history. What Bradley didn't know was that Rivera's actions had triggered something much bigger than a viral moment. Hidden in the crowd was Captain Jennifer Walsh, a military intelligence officer, who had been investigating suspicious activities around military ceremonies for months. She had recognized Victoria Sterling immediately, not as a publicist, but as the daughter of disgraced contractor Richard Sterling. Captain Walsh had been tracking the Sterling family's attempts to infiltrate and undermine military institutions as revenge for her father's court-martial. While Bradley was still standing there in shocked silence, Captain Walsh was already on her secure phone. "Operation Mockingbird is confirmed," she whispered. "We have them all on record. Begin evidence collection immediately." The military had been watching them the entire time. Maria Gonzalez, Bradley's former assistant, emerged from behind a monument where she had been filming everything with her own camera. She wasn't just a concerned citizen, she was a military spouse who had been working with veterans, advocacy groups to expose the conspiracy. As Bradley's crew packed up in confused silence, Maria was uploading her footage to secure servers that Victoria's team could never reach or delete. Every planning meeting, every strategy session, every moment of their conspiracy was documented. Rivera's partner, Staff Sergeant Thomas Chen, had also been recording everything from his hidden position, but his footage wasn't for social media, it was evidence for the military tribunal that was already being assembled. The 3 conspirators thought they had won. Victoria was already spinning the incident for maximum controversy. Mitchell was calculating advertising revenue from the inevitable media storm. Leonard was writing follow-up material for next week's show. They had no idea that their phones were being monitored, their communications were being intercepted, and their financial records were being scrutinized by military investigators, who had been building a case against them for 6 months. Bradley stood alone in the cemetery, his crew packing around him, still not understanding what had just happened. He thought he had just delivered the performance of his career. He had no idea he had just confessed to conspiracy against military honor on national television. The awakening wasn't just Bradley's, it was America's. Within minutes, the footage was spreading through military networks, veterans groups, and patriotic communities faster than any viral video in history. But this time, they weren't just sharing outrage. They were sharing evidence. Evidence that would destroy not just Bradley's career, but expose the entire network of people who had been systematically attacking American military honor for profit. The silent war had begun, and the good guys were already winning. Within 6 hours of the Arlington incident, a digital war was raging behind the scenes. While Bradley's team celebrated what they thought was their greatest publicity coup, military intelligence was systematically dismantling their entire operation. Captain Walsh's team had been preparing for this moment for months. They had infiltrated Victoria Sterling's inner circle through a brilliant double agent, Sarah Martinez, who posed as a freelance social media consultant while actually being a decorated Army cyber warfare specialist. Sarah had been attending every one of Victoria's strategy meetings, recording everything on military-grade surveillance equipment. The evidence was devastating. Audio recordings of Victoria explicitly stating her intention to destroy military worship in America, financial records showing payments to cemetery officials for unauthorized access, and most damning of all, email chains discussing their plans to escalate attacks on Gold Star families. Meanwhile, Maria Gonzalez was revealing her true role in the operation. She wasn't just Bradley's former assistant, she was a military investigator working undercover for the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. For 8 months, she had been documenting Bradley's increasingly anti-military content, building a case for incitement against military institutions. Her evidence room contained thousands of hours of recordings. Bradley bragging about destroying military mythology, Victoria coaching him on psychological warfare techniques, and Mitchell calculating profit margins from veteran suicide jokes. Every conspiracy meeting had been recorded, every financial transaction tracked, every communication intercepted. The most shocking discovery came from Leonard Voss's personal files. Sarah had hacked his computer and found his real masterpiece, a 200-page manifesto titled Destroying American Military Mythology, a strategic guide to cultural warfare. It outlined a 5-year plan to systematically mock military honors, veteran benefits, and patriotic traditions until public support collapsed. But Leonard had made a fatal error. His manifesto revealed something that elevated this from entertainment controversy to national security threat. He had been in contact with foreign propaganda networks. Chinese and Russian disinformation specialists had been funding his research through shell companies, paying him $50,000 monthly to develop anti-military content. Captain Walsh's team traced the money. Victoria's publicity firm had received $2.3 million from overseas accounts linked to hostile foreign governments. Mitchell's bonuses were being supplemented by international sources that wanted to see American military respect destroyed. This wasn't just entertainment, it was psychological warfare. The evidence collection reached its climax when Staff Sergeant Chen revealed his secret role. He wasn't just Rivera's partner, he was a decorated intelligence operative who had been monitoring the ceremony specifically because of intercepted communications about the planned attack. His hidden cameras had captured something the public footage missed. Victoria Sterling making a phone call immediately after Bradley's performance. The call was to a number traced to a Chinese intelligence front company. Phase 1 complete, she had said. American military dignity is now fair game for public mockery. Proceed to Phase 2. Phase 2, according to intercepted documents, involved expanding the mockery to military funerals, veteran hospitals, and eventually, active combat operations. The goal was to make military service so socially unacceptable that recruitment would collapse and America's defense capabilities would crumble from within. By midnight on November 11th, military investigators had assembled the most comprehensive case of Franz cultural sabotage in American history. They had audio, video, financial records, communications, and a complete organizational chart of the conspiracy, but they needed one more piece of evidence. Proof that Bradley knew about the foreign connections. That's when Maria revealed her final card. She had been secretly recording Bradley's private phone calls from his penthouse office. The smoking gun came in a recording from November 8th, 3 days before Arlington. Bradley's voice was clear. I don't care who's paying for it, Victoria. If mocking dead soldiers gets me ratings and international recognition, I'm in. Just make sure the money's clean enough that I don't go to prison. Victoria's response was even more damning. Don't worry about the sources, Bradley. Our foreign friends understand the value of what we're doing. They're investing in America's future, a future where military worship is a thing of the past. By dawn on November 12th, the evidence was complete. What had started as a comedian's arrogant stunt had exposed the largest foreign-sponsored attack on American military culture in modern history. The trap was set. The evidence was overwhelming. Now it was time for justice to be served in the most public, devastating way possible. But first, they had to let the conspirators dig their own graves a little deeper. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in military precision. While Bradley's team was celebrating their victory with champagne and congratulations, the most sophisticated takedown operation in entertainment history was being orchestrated from a secure facility in Quantico, Virginia. General Patricia Morrison, the highest-ranking female officer in Army intelligence, had taken personal command of what was now classified as Operation Sacred Honor. She had lost her own son in Iraq and watched helplessly as his sacrifice was mocked by comedians like Bradley. This time, she would ensure justice was served. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let the conspirators believe they had succeeded. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. Then expose everything simultaneously across multiple platforms to prevent any cover-up or damage. Control. Captain Walsh's team had infiltrated every level of Bradley's organization. Sarah Martinez had convinced Victoria to hire her as their crisis management specialist, giving her access to their entire response strategy. Meanwhile, Maria Gonzalez had been rehired by Bradley's network as a consultant, positioning her to sabotage their defensive measures from within. The military's secret weapon was technological superiority. Every phone call, every email, every text message from the conspirators was being monitored and recorded. They had real-time access to Victoria's planning documents, Mitchell's financial records, and Leonard's international communications. The conspirators thought they were planning their next phase. They were actually providing evidence for their own prosecution. Bradley's arrogance was their greatest asset. Convinced he was untouchable, he had scheduled a primetime special for November 15th called Sacred Cows. Why nothing should be off limits. The show would feature extended segments, mocking military ceremonies, veteran suicides, and Gold Star families. Foreign propaganda networks had already paid $5 million for international distribution rights. Victoria had prepared her defense strategy, not knowing that Sarah was copying every document to military servers. Their plan was to claim First Amendment protection while simultaneously releasing edited footage that made the military look like oppressive, bullies attacking free speech. Chinese and Russian media outlets were ready to amplify the narrative globally. Mitchell had convinced network executives that the controversy would generate $50 million in additional advertising revenue. He had already sold premium ad slots to international companies eager to be associated with brave American anti-military programming. The financial conspiracy was expanding beyond their original goals. Leonard was preparing his masterpiece, a comedy special that would systematically mock every military tradition, every veterans organization, and every patriotic symbol in American culture. Foreign handlers had provided him with psychological profiles of American military families, teaching him which attacks would cause maximum emotional damage. But General Morrison's team was ready. They had prepared a coordinated response that would hit every conspirator simultaneously across multiple fronts: criminal, civil, financial, and social. The legal team had assembled charges ranging from conspiracy against the United States to accepting foreign payments for hostile propaganda. The evidence was so overwhelming that plea bargains were impossible. This was going to trial, and it was going to be public. The financial warfare specialists had identified every offshore account, every shell company, and every foreign payment. They were prepared to freeze assets, seize properties, and bankrupt the entire network within hours of the revelation. The psychological operations unit had prepared counter-narratives that would turn public opinion so decisively against the conspirators that rehabilitation would be impossible. Every veterans organization, every military family, and every patriotic American would understand exactly what had been done to them. Most importantly, they had Sergeant Rivera's cooperation. He had agreed to break his traditional silence and testify publicly about what he had witnessed. His testimony would be the emotional centerpiece of the revelation. A true American hero speaking truth to corrupt power. The timing was perfect. Bradley's November 15th special would air as scheduled, but it would be the last thing he ever broadcast. As soon as his anti-military content went live, the evidence would be released simultaneously to every major news outlet, every social media platform, and every military communication network. Within minutes of Bradley's attack on American military honor, the public would know about the foreign conspiracy, the financial corruption, and the systematic sabotage of military respect. The backlash would be swift, decisive, and permanent. On November 14th, the night before the special, General Morrison made her final preparations. Tomorrow, she told her team, we remind America that some things are sacred, some people are heroes, and some attacks will never be tolerated. The countdown to justice had begun. November 15th, 2023, 8 p.m. EST. Sacred Cows. Why Nothing Should Be Off Limits went live to 12 million viewers. Bradley Thornton appeared on stage in a military-style jacket covered in fake medals. His opening line, a deliberate provocation: "Welcome to the show where dead soldiers can't complain about the jokes." For the first 27 minutes, everything went according to his plan. Bradley systematically mocked military funerals, made jokes about PTSD, and ridiculed Gold Star mothers. The studio audience, carefully selected for their sentiments, laughed on cue. International viewers watched as American military honor was torn apart for entertainment. Victoria Sterling watched from the control room, already uploading clips to Chinese and Russian propaganda networks. Mitchell Crane was calculating international revenue streams. Leonard Voss was taking notes for next week's even more devastating content. Then, at exactly 8:27 p.m., every screen in America went dark for 3 seconds. When the broadcast resumed, it wasn't Bradley's show anymore. It was General Patricia Morrison, in full dress uniform, standing at a podium with the American flag behind her. Her voice was calm, authoritative, and absolutely devastating. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just witnessed was not comedy. It was treason. The revelation came in waves, each one more shocking than the last. General Morrison displayed the evidence methodically, professionally, and without mercy. Bank records showing foreign payments, audio recordings of conspiracy meetings, video evidence of coordination with hostile nations. Bradley Thornton, Victoria Sterling, Mitchell Crane, and Leonard Voss have been accepting payments from Chinese and Russian intelligence services to systematically destroy American military respect. This was not entertainment, it was psychological warfare. The studio audience sat in stunned silence as military police entered from every exit. Bradley's face went white as he realized his microphone was dead and his cameras were no longer under his control. Sarah Martinez revealed herself, removing her disguise and standing in full army dress uniform. I am Captain Sarah Martinez, military intelligence. For 8 months, I have been documenting your conspiracy against the United States military. Maria Gonzalez stepped forward next to I am Major Maria Gonzalez, Department of Defense, Inspector General. Every meeting you held, every plan you made, every foreign payment you received, we recorded it all. The evidence played on every screen in America. Victoria's phone call to Chinese handlers. Mitchell's emails about destroying military mythology. Leonard's manifesto detailing psychological attacks on military families. Bradley's recorded conversation accepting foreign money to mock dead soldiers. But the moment that broke the conspirators came when Sergeant Rivera appeared on screen. Still in his tomb guard uniform, his voice steady and dignified. I have guarded the tomb of the unknown soldier for 18 months. I have stood in silence while families mourned, while children learned respect, while a nation honored its fallen. What these people did was not just disrespectful, it was an attack on every American who has ever served, ever sacrificed, ever bled for this country. His words carried the weight of absolute moral authority. They thought our silence meant weakness. They were wrong. Our silence was strength, and today, that strength answers back. The financial evidence was the final blow. $2.3 million from Chinese sources, $1.8 million from Russian propaganda funds, $500,000 from Iranian disinformation networks. The money trail was complete, undeniable, and absolutely devastating. As military police moved to arrest the conspirators, Bradley made one last desperate attempt to save himself. This is censorship, this is oppression. I have the right to free speech. General Morrison's response ended his career forever. You have the right to free speech. Mr. Thornton, you do not have the right to commit treason. You do not have the right to accept foreign money to attack American military honor. You do not have the right to mock the sacrifice of better men and women than you will ever be. Victoria Sterling was led away in handcuffs, her phone still recording as Chinese handlers watched their operation collapse in real time. Mitchell Crane's network career ended as shareholders realized their company had been used as a front for foreign propaganda. Leonard Voss's manifesto became evidence in a federal treason trial. The studio cleared in minutes. The show was over. The conspiracy was exposed. The justice was swift, public, and absolute. By 9 p.m. every major news network was covering the story. By 10 p.m. international media was reporting America's successful exposure of foreign cultural warfare. By midnight, the hashtag Sacred Honor was trending worldwide. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of justice served and honor restored. 3 months later, the courtroom in Washington, D.C. was packed with military families, veterans, and patriots who had come to witness justice being served. The trial of Bradley Thornton and his co-conspirators had become the most watched legal proceeding since Watergate. Bradley sat at the defendant's table, longer the arrogant king of late-night television. His $50 million contract had been terminated within hours of the revelation. His penthouse had been seized by federal agents. His awards had been stripped by every organization that had ever honored him. The man who once commanded millions of viewers now couldn't get a job hosting a local access show. Victoria Sterling's defense crumbled when prosecutors played her recorded phone calls with foreign handlers. We have successfully compromised American military respect, her own voice testified against her. Her law license was revoked, her publicity firm was dissolved, and her assets were frozen. The woman who had orchestrated the attack on military honor now faced 25 years in federal prison. Mitchell Crane's network career ended in spectacular fashion. Shareholders filed class action lawsuits when they discovered their company had been used as a front for foreign propaganda. The network's stock price collapsed, losing $3.2 billion in market value in a single week. Mitchell personally faced charges of conspiracy, money laundering, and violation of foreign agent registration laws. Leonard Voss received the harshest sentence of all. His manifesto detailing plans to destroy military recruitment through psychological warfare was classified as an act of terrorism. The comedy writer who had mocked fallen soldiers was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. But the real justice came in the transformation of American culture. The exposure of the conspiracy had awakened something powerful in the American spirit. Military respect, which had been under attack for years, surged to levels not seen since World War II. Sergeant Rivera became a national hero. His silent dignity, in the face of attack, inspired millions of Americans to stand up for military honor. He was promoted to Master Sergeant and received the Medal of Commendation for his service. More importantly, his example inspired a new generation of young Americans to enlist in military service. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier received more visitors in the 3 months following the incident than in the previous 3 years combined. Families brought their children to teach them about sacrifice and honor. Veterans organizations reported their highest membership numbers in decades. General Morrison was promoted to 4-star rank and appointed as the new Secretary of Defense. Her leadership during Operation Sacred Honor proved that American military intelligence could defend the nation not just from physical attacks, but from cultural warfare designed to destroy military respect. Captain Walsh and her team received commendations for their brilliant counterintelligence operation. Their success in exposing the conspiracy became a case study taught at military academies worldwide, demonstrating how to defend national values against sophisticated foreign attacks. Sarah Martinez and Maria Gonzalez were awarded the Distinguished Service Medal for their undercover work. Their sacrifice of personal safety to expose the conspiracy showed that American military women were every bit as dedicated to defending the nation as their male counterparts. The foreign governments that had funded the conspiracy faced severe diplomatic consequences. Chinese cultural exchange programs were suspended. Russian media outlets were banned from American military bases. Iranian propaganda networks found their American assets frozen and their operations exposed. Most importantly, the entertainment industry learned that some boundaries should never be crossed. Networks instituted new policies requiring background checks for content creators. Comedy clubs began refusing material that mocked military sacrifice. The message was clear: attacking American military honor would no longer be tolerated or profitable. Bradley's former Showtime slot was given to Heroes Among Us, a program dedicated to honoring military families and veteran achievements. The ratings were higher than Bradley had ever achieved, proving that Americans preferred celebrating heroism over mocking sacrifice. 3 months after his arrest, Bradley Thornton sat in his prison cell, no longer the king of anything. His empire had crumbled, his legacy was destroyed, and his name had become synonymous with treason. The man who had thought himself untouchable had learned that some things are indeed sacred, and those who attack them face consequences that money and fame cannot prevent. Justice had been served, honor had been restored, and America had learned that its military heroes would always be protected by citizens willing to fight for what is right. Today, as I write this story 6 months later, Sergeant Rivera still stands guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. But something has changed in America. The attack on our military honor didn't weaken us, it awakened us. It reminded us that freedom isn't free, that respect must be earned, and that some things are worth defending with everything we have. Bradley Thornton's cell block has no television, no audience, no applause. The man who once commanded millions of viewers now speaks. Only 2 concrete walls. His legacy isn't laughter, it's a warning about what happens when arrogance meets authentic honor and loses. Victoria Sterling's propaganda network lies in ruins. Its foreign funding exposed. Its American collaborators in prison. The woman who thought she could destroy military respect from within learned that American patriots are always watching, always ready to defend what matters most. But this story isn't really about their downfall. It's about our awakening. In the months since the Arlington incident, military recruitment has surged by 400%. Veterans organizations report their highest support levels in 50 years. Gold Star families are receiving respect and assistance they haven't seen in decades. The real victory belongs to every American who stood up when military honor was under attack, to every veteran who refused to let their service be mocked, to every family member who defended their loved one's sacrifice, to every citizen who understood that some things are sacred and must be protected. Sergeant Rivera's 12 seconds of silence spoke louder than any speech ever could. His dignity in the face of attack showed us what true strength looks like. His example reminds us that the best response to hatred isn't more hatred, it's unshakable honor that exposes evil simply by existing. The foreign enemies who tried to destroy our military respect through cultural warfare learned something important. Americans may disagree on many things, but we stand united when our heroes are attacked. We may have different political views, but we share the same fundamental respect for those who serve. This story proves that truth always wins, that justice always prevails, and that honor always defeats dishonor, even when the battle seems hopeless, even when the enemy seems powerful, even when the odds appear stacked against what's right. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why military service matters, if it inspired you to stand up for what's sacred, then you have a responsibility. You must comment honor above all, to show that you understand what real heroism looks like. You must share this story because there are still people trying to attack military respect, and they need to know that Americans are watching. When you subscribe to this channel, you're not just following content, you're joining a community of Americans who refuse to let our heroes be mocked, our traditions be destroyed, or our values be sold to the highest bidder. We have hundreds of stories like this that the mainstream media won't tell. Stories of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things to protect what matters most. Remember, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. The cost of honor is constant defense. The reward of courage is a nation worthy of the sacrifice our heroes have made. As Sergeant Rivera proved in those 12 seconds of perfect silence, sometimes the most powerful response to evil isn't words, it's unwavering dignity, unshakable honor, and the quiet strength of those who know that some things are worth more than money, more than fame, more than anything this world can offer. Honor is not just what we do when others are watching, it's who we are when no one else can see. True patriots don't need applause to do what's right. They just need to know that somewhere, somehow, their sacrifice matters. That's the truth Bradley Thornton never understood. That's the power Victoria Sterling couldn't destroy. That's the honor that will always triumph over dishonor, no matter how much money, how much influence, or how much foreign support stands against it.